Mr. Bob Burg. Cannot believe it. We are here to talk about adversaries into allies. It's not a parable.
It is not a that's the best endorsement Chris Rogan could ever give me. It's
Yeah.
not a parable.
Bob is co-author of a ridiculously famous book called The Go-Giver. I mean, it just will never not sell. You must, I always think, how could I write a book as perennial as something like The Go-Giver? But that book will not stop selling.
Well,
And
first you get a co-author like John David Mann who can write a parable, and you team up with him. That's how you do it.
see, and everyone else loves the hell out of that. But to me, I mean, this is the book for me. This book has, really good principles. This book is solid. It's laid out like I don't know. I'm just not a parable guy.
Yeah,
So
no, I know you're not, and that's okay.
I fail right away at number one, control your own emotions. You have 5 principles. One of them is control your own emotions. I fail because I get pretty emotional, I think. How do you train that into somebody?
Yeah. Well, first, you're not the only one. We all go through that. And that was a huge problem in my life for a big time, Chris, for a long time. And I had to learn how to control that. That did not come natural to me. And the fact is, as human beings, we are emotional beings. I mean, we're logical, but we're also very, very emotional. And that's okay. That's not a problem. Emotions are great. They make life, they're part of what make life worth living. But as one of my great friends and mentors, Don Scumaci, says, hey, emotions are great. Take them along for the ride, but make sure you're driving the car. And that's the key. When we're in control of our emotions, then we're in a position where we can take a potentially negative situation or a potential ally and turn it into a win for everyone involved. So, yes, we need to, if that is a challenge, and I do in the book provide steps for learning how to control your emotions and being able to retrain yourself to do that.
Yeah, I loved your part about effectively handling verbal attacks. I thought that was a really great one. Think before you speak. What I also like is that very much applies to think before you tweet or
Yes, absolutely.
things of
Yes.
that nature.
Yes. And that's one of the neat things about social media is you can, you can think about it, have a lot more time to think about it as
Right.
opposed to an in-person conversation where sometimes the pressure's on a bit.
Yeah, you don't. It's amazing sometimes how it seems so instantaneous. I mean, there's people who tweet all the time who instantly have a big storm blow out because they just didn't take a minute to really think
Oh,
through.
how often have we seen celebrities do that? And they have it impacts them totally. It can ruin a career. But, for any of us, we need to be careful.
Well, I did it once, Bob. I did it during the U.S. presidential elections with John McCain. I had no really solid knowledge of who John McCain was. I had no idea that he was a war hero, that he had been tortured by, foreign troops or whatever. And I had no idea that he had physical limitations. So I made a joke on Twitter about the fact that a guy never really raised his arms up higher than this. And it was sort of like you must raise your arms at least this high to be a president or something like that. No idea that I was really insulting a U.S. war hero, and boy did I earn some lashing, rightly so. And all I really did was just claim my legitimate ignorance, and that got me out. But to your point, I mean, there's a lot of ways I could have done that a lot better if I'd read your book first. You go right into understanding the clash of belief systems, and oh my gosh. I was just in a situation where I was sitting across the table from 2 investors and talking to them about this company that I'm doing some work with, and they were trying to suss out how greedy I was and how motivated by revenue I was. And I was saying, not at all. Like, that's not how I do what I do. I'm really money is I like money a lot, but it comes, out of this.
Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder to values lightning. Sure.
Right.
So you put on the value, the money comes as a
Oh,
result of the value you provided.
how do you get
Which was
these
what
great
that parable The Go-Giver was about.
Is that what that is? But you know what I thought the whole time was, of course, that was the wrong answer for them because they want me to be greedy because they're investors and they want to hear me say, I'm going to get you 100 times back on what you paid for or whatever. So that's what happened. So, how do you even start to suss out other people's belief systems? Your first point of view is just understand that there are 2 belief systems.
That's the key. You just nailed it. It's not that you're necessarily going to understand their belief system. It's simply understanding that they probably see the world differently than you see the world. They have a different lens through which they see the world. Our belief system is a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television, movies, social media, everything we touch, taste, hear, sense, smell, the whole thing. And it's handed to us when we're no more than a baby. And as it develops, we're not conscious of what's coming into that, but we don't have that sentry of the mind guarding what's coming in. So we tend to absorb all these things. We grow up, we have this belief system that we don't even know. We are basically the servant of an operating system, a belief system that we don't even know we have, Chris. Now, not only that, the other person is the same. They don't know they're being run by this belief system. And then you put together the fact that we think as human beings that most people see the world as we see the world, which is why you hear people saying, oh, everybody feels that way.
Right.
Or nobody would want that. But that's not true. So the first thing we need to do is simply not understand their belief. Hey, we might not even understand our own belief system, but we need to understand that theirs is probably different from ours. And once we're conscious of that, now we're in a position we can operate within that context for everyone's benefit.
There was a laugh out loud moment for me in the book, which was love language from Liberty the cat. Speaking of, different belief systems. Want to tell that story just briefly?
She brought me in. I met Liberty. She was a stray cat. I think she was feral. I'm not really sure, but eventually we got to be great friends, and she became my cat, and I became her human. And one day, I'm an animal lover. I'm an animal fanatic, but I always grew up with dogs. I've always had dogs. I had never had cats before. And so one day she brings me in onto the patio, a dead mouse head. And I had heard that cats bring in gifts to their humans, okay, as a way of saying thanks. But obviously it held no value to me. And so, of course, I put on Facebook that my stray cat Liberty brought in a dead mouse head. It looked a lot. It was shaped very much like the head of the horse in the Godfather movie. And so I said, I wonder what she's trying to tell me. Now, whenever I post something that I think is prolific, it's profound, rather, I think, I get 3 responses. Okay. Now, to this one about Liberty the cat, I got like 73. Okay. But they were great lessons. One was, well, that's not what you value. That's not your love language based on Gary Chapman's wonderful book, 5 Love Languages, but that's what she values. So you can at least value the fact that she cared enough to send this. It's like all sorts of great, but the point was we all have our different ways of expressing love and receiving love. And so what we need to do, this goes back to belief systems. See, we might think the other person appreciates being motivated through kind words, but another person just wants facts, and another person this. Well, we've always got to ask ourselves, what does this person want? What does this person need? What do they desire? What is their value system? And to the degree we act accordingly with that, that's the degree we're going to have the ability to influence positively another human being.
Whew. That's a tricky lesson to learn, Bob Burg. I think it's a good one, though. Going right from that and to acknowledge their ego, which is a challenging chapter to me in a lot of ways. I mean, this is one of the chapters I think I got the most, sections, I got the most out of. One of the parts I really enjoyed was be a judge, not a lawyer. And I was really with you until you told me I couldn't wear the gown to work, or that, I necessarily didn't have to wear the gown to work. But walk us through that just a little bit. Tell the gang at home what we're talking about.
Well, we tend to have a position about something, Chris, and we defend that position when the other person says something that doesn't align with what we already think. And so what we want to do is, rather than a lawyer who has the legitimate function of persuading the judge or jury to a certain position, to a certain conclusion, when we act more as a judge, our job is to take what that other person says and not just make a decision, but seek the truth of the situation. And we do that by allowing our minds to be open, which, when we say our mind should be open, not so big that our brains drop out of it, but we can still be open to other and really look at it logically, critically, not in a negative way, but critically in terms of really thinking it and asking questions, checking our premises, and not just holding to a position. And when we do that, we're actually showing that other person a great deal of respect. We can ask that person questions in a tactful way as to why they might think that or how they conclude that, and then we dialogue back and forth. But we listen not to speak, we listen to learn. and to respect the other person.
Well, I guess I can live with that. Hey, Bob, you're a professional speaker. Did you think for a minute when you wrote that title, oh crap, now the lawyers won't let me come and speak to them because I told people not to be a lawyer?
No, because what I said was, if it's your job, I said if you are a lawyer, you should be doing that as long as you're doing it within the confines of the law.
Just in my head, I thought of you, the pro speaker, going, I should make sure that they don't think I shouldn't.
I actually have a lot of lawyers as clients who have been embracing that book. So yeah, but yeah, it's a good question.
No question in my mind, you have a lot of lawyers that work with you. So you have, let's see, where are we now? I think I'm still in the ego area, but I was going to go into set the proper frame. But
Right, that's important. Yeah.
I like the handwritten notes part. I think that's really important. And complimenting the uncomplimented. I think you have so many great bits in there, and I'm trying to stick them in really fast because I was late to our interview and make sure people know they're there. Framing is really important to how I started to get a lot better at what I do, and I have so much to learn still. But the U.S. Military system was trying to have a contest within itself to determine what was the best, most flexible, most often useful strategy to teach their soldiers, because they were trying to figure out if all just went to hell, like what was a fallback strategy that if everyone knew it, it would be better to like make that play, so to speak. And they came up with the OODA loop, which you've probably heard of, which is observe, orient, decide, and act, which is again a method of framing.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about your version of framing. Talk about the Ransberger pivot and all these sorts of things. There's some cool stuff in this chapter.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, a frame is simply the foundation from which everything else takes place. And I use an example in the one of the short stories in the book is a young toddler who's probably 2 years old, maybe a little older. This was at a Dunkin' Donuts, and he was walking around the restaurant, and he was walking toward his parents. And as he did, he sort of took a spill on the floor. He fell. I don't think he really hurt himself, but you could tell he intuitively knew that wasn't supposed to happen. So he looked at mom and dad for their interpretation of the event. So the event happened. He was looking for their interpretation. Now, Chris, I think had they gone, oh no, my poor baby, oh, he's so hurt, we got to get him out, he'd have probably gotten upset and started crying. But the parents handled it so beautifully. You know, they started to clap. Oh, that was so good. And how fun. And immediately his face just beamed with joy. He started laughing. You know, well, they set a wonderful frame. Now, setting a frame for someone, when you meet, so it could be just a smile and a from the heart good morning. But we also sometimes need to reset the other person's frame. And I give an example, a very short example in the book of it. When I pulled into the parking lot of a hotel, and I wasn't paying attention as I should have been. It was my fault. And I nearly clipped a guy as he was getting out the driver's side of his car. And he shot me a nasty, nasty, if looks could kill, kind of look. Well, that he reacted rather than responded. He was not in control of his emotions, and you couldn't blame him. Now, had I reacted to that and not been in control of I might have, I'd have bought into his frame. What are you looking at? He would have been, at worst, it would have been a horrible situation. At best, it just would have been uncomfortable. But instead, what I did is I reset his frame. I just immediately, I looked back at him. I waved my hand as an apology, and I just, through the windshield, I just went, sorry. And immediately he went, no problem.
That's okay. You almost killed me.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But it's so easy to do that. We just have to first respond and then reset the frame. See, in any and this is so important to know, in any potentially difficult interpersonal situation, a frame will be set. The only question is, who is going to set the frame? The other person or you? Now, if you allow them to, what you're doing is you're simply depending on luck that person's going to have a positive attitude, have a positive frame, and be win-win in nature. If you take on the responsibility, you can practically guarantee the results are going to be what you want. So you want to set the frame, and if the frame's already been set, you need to just sort of tactfully reset the frame.
So I'm going to say something that will come off as me trying to praise myself, but that's not really the goal. So I said to Rob Hatch, my everything at my company, I said, Rob, it's the coolest thing. I have so many great retail experience stories. Like, I don't know why everyone complains about customer service. I get great service wherever I go. He says, you elicit great customer service.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. He said, you do that. He goes, remember this? And then he explains it. I was like, oh. But my point isn't, good Chris. My point is,
It's very true.
it's what I do, Bob. And I do it because I like good customer service. So I figure if I can figure out what's going to make this person treat me better, but not in a manipulative way, just, what I would like, then I think it's going to work better for both of us. One time it was a really harried person at a Starbucks or something. And you could tell she was just in that grinder mode of like, take the order, take the order. And she says, can I help you? And I said, you can. I would like to take a deep breath right now. Can I just do that in front of you? And she watched me do this, and then she started to smile, and I said, you know what else I'd like? And then I made my order, and everything was good.
You reset her frame. Now, when you just walk up to that person, the barista, okay, who doesn't have a negative frame established, but you walk up and you just say, good morning, with a smile, which most people don't necessarily do. Right. You've set the proper frame. But when she has a negative frame and then you did what you did, wow, you've reset her frame and made her day a lot better.
But if I were a salesperson, first off, I probably know this, but I don't do it enough. If I'm a salesperson, this is probably some of those soft skill areas where I don't think enough about it. These are the things where, like, for instance, I was reading a somewhat older now Dave Ramsey book, Entree Leadership, and he was talking about how when he was selling homes way back in his first career, he said that there were all these things you knew. So when the car rolled up, you judged the car, you judged the shoes, you judged the spouse, all these judgments that they were making, and then deciding how they'd act based on those.
Based on belief systems. That's what,
a couple chapters ago. But in the frame setting mode that he kind of found himself learning, which is interesting because he didn't call it anything like that, of course. I just think this is the prime part of this book for salespeople. How do you feel about that?
Well, as far as not judging based on appearance.
Well, and understanding frame setting and all that. I mean, you do a lot of speeches in front of salespeople. How do you present this part to them in that way?
Well, Chris, and we've all heard the stories of, well, maybe not all, but most of us have heard the stories about the person who comes into the car dealership who's dressed in, kind of ragtag and not very. And it turns out all the salespeople ignore them. And then the one salesperson approaches, turns out this person buys a fleet of cars or buys the most expensive car. And that can happen. Now, of course, we also, in our businesses, we need to be able to qualify and pre-qualify in a way that allows the people to identify themselves who want. So there's not one necessary way. I think it's like this. We show kindness and respect to everyone. And we do that first because it's just the right way to be. Secondly, it also ends up having really great benefits as well. You know what I'm saying? So I think framing really is everything. And again, I think that when you set a proper frame, you're 80% of the way to the results that you desire. Because remember, the frame is like a premise or a foundation. Everything emanates from that frame.
Yes, indeed. I buy it. Okay, Bob, so now we are at the last of the principles. I did such a great job of keeping on track here, but now we have to communicate with tact and empathy. And again, not unlike the frame chapter, I think this is one of those ones that we think we already know. I have a feeling that whatever your weakest exercise is at the gym, or you're supposed to eat more green vegetables, but knowing and doing is different. How do you even have that conversation? Let's pretend, Bob, you do a lot of leadership training and all that. What if you're, helping managers try to figure out how to better explain tact and empathy? You talk about how to deal with interrupters. There's a lot in this section.
Well, what is tact? My dad has always defined tact as the language of strength. And I really think that's what tact is, because you can do so much with tact when it's genuine and authentic than by not being tactful. And I think tact is the ultimate in respect. It's a way of being able to, correct someone, to teach someone, to critique someone. Dare I be politically incorrect, Chris, and say criticize someone? And we don't want to do any of these things. But hey, we're talking about the real world. And sometimes we need to be, somebody overpays on a negotiable product. Somebody gives a customer some wrong information. Someone speaks disrespectfully to a family member or a coworker. And we need to be able to tactfully, we need to do this in a way that not only is this person not going to be defensive and close themselves off, but in a way that this person will be open to us and more accepting of our ideas. You've heard me say before, in the sales context, that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. I think we can allow themselves to be influenced by those people they know, like, and trust. And to like you and to trust you, they need to know that you're not out to hurt them, that you're not out to insult them, to offend them, that when you have to critique or correct, which sometimes we do, that you're going to do it in a way that honors their feelings. So, it could be as simple as, somebody said, Chris, someone says, we need to get this product done. The person who you're doing a project for says, we need this product right away. We need this completed right away. Well, what do they mean by right away? See, we go back to belief systems. Right away could mean tonight in my world. Right away could mean next week in this person's world. It could mean next month. So instead of just saying to the person, well, I don't know what you mean by right away, or you got to tell me more. What we could first of all, the actual question would be, how would you define right away, or what do you mean? But let's say it tactfully. Just for my own clarification, when you say right away, is there a specific date you're thinking of? Now we've said, and that was just one quick example off the cuff, but that's a way to say something. It's genuine, it's authentic, but you're honoring that person and you're framing that tact in a way that this person doesn't feel defensive, but is going to be able to answer.
That's the other best part of this book is it's a little bit like Russian pop dolls. All the pieces work on each other. You have to understand framing to understand how to do tact better. You have to understand, how to deal with egos to understand how to frame something better. It all just piles in a nice, plausibly perfect way.
I appreciate that so much. And that's why I used stories, because because all the chapters are about one page, a half a page and a half of stories that have happened to everyone reading it, has happened, is happening, or probably will happen at some time in their lives. And so after sharing the 5 principles in that first chapter, I then just told stories throughout the book, because stories are fun. You connect with stories and people can picture themselves, because I want people coming away from this book, Chris, saying to themselves, I can do that, and know that that's true.
Yeah, we learn from stories. I totally and utterly agree. Oh man, I had one last little question, and then I was going to let you be. But
it's a parable.
Yeah, it's such a great. I love the flavor of it.
Thank you.
You know what it was? It was, sugar. I had it, and then I just let my finger go. Oh, I know. Guess why I was never going to be a professional comedian?
Why? Guess why you weren't? Why? Oh, because you don't have timing?
Bad timing. That's why, Bob Burg. I have bad timing. So no, I think that's a great point. You make so many good points in the timing rules. Can you just give us one little note on that before I kick you out?
Sure. When you need to call, let's say, a meeting because you need to discuss something with someone that's important, you need to make sure the timing is right. There's a time and place for everything, right? Well, a time not to ask someone about something important is when they're in a rush, or when you're in a rush, or in the middle of a crowded room with their attention. So what we need to do is tactfully be able to get the time with this person for them to be able to speak when we know there's not going to be the rush that's keeping the point from being made. That's so important. It's not just saying the right thing to the right person. It's doing so at the right time.
It's giving them oxygen. And there are 250 or more pages to this thing, 240 or so. It is an absolute treasure trove. And thank you, Bob Burg, for being around. Everybody, by the way, you can go to burg.com. That is Bob's site. You can follow him as @BobBurg on Twitter and everywhere else. Bob, thanks so much for your time.
Chris, I appreciate you so much. Thank you.